welcome to another In Conversation with the This Can Happen ambassadors. My name is Sylvia Bruce and I'm delighted to be joined today by Dawn and Jack. Last month's Mental Health Awareness Week was about loneliness, and although we're a bit late to the party, we thought we'd carry on that conversation because loneliness isn't just for a week, it can continue for a lot longer. And we've just had the Jubilee as well, and so many people would have been celebrating with loved ones and friends and family, but we're conscious that many people wouldn't have done. I know in my mental health or challenges of quite a few years ago, loneliness played a huge part in contributing to my poor mental health. But I wonder what both your experiences have been of that. What's your experience of loneliness, whether that be personally or professionally, or it's someone else's that you're dealing with? I'll open over to both of you. What's your experience of loneliness?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and just and something that conjures up lots of thoughts for me. So my own personal experience when I was going through my own issues with mental health probably 5-6 years ago now, I hadn't realized at the time that because I had lots and lots of people around me, lots of people, after I got to the point where I'd shared what was going on with me, I think there was a period of time when I intentionally isolated myself, which I think by default then made me quite lonely. And part of the reason that I did that was because I just didn't want to see people, I just didn't want people to see how much I was struggling. So I thought by, isolating myself out of, social situations or work situations, I was almost protecting me by putting a barrier up and protecting them from seeing that I was struggling. What I realize now is that I felt quite lonely. So when I did allow them to sort of know what was happening with me, and I did share openly with sort of friends and family, there was lots of people around me saying, that they'd help, they'd support. But at that time I was still feeling quite lonely because I was also working through some self-worth stuff. So at that period of time I didn't feel I was good enough or clever enough or whatever it was the emotions I was struggling with at the time. And because of that, the support that they were trying to give me wasn't landing, because I was almost putting a barrier up to say I'm not worthy of this support, kindness, love, friendship. So on one hand, I'd got lots of people wanting to help me, but on the other hand, I felt really lonely. But I now know that was probably driven by the barriers that I was putting up, not letting those people in to help and support. So it's a real double-edged sword for me.
Yes, it's interesting because I had a similar experience where loneliness was, it's like the loneliness was contributing, but the poor mental health, in a way, didn't allow me to reach out to other people. So that's sort of double-edged sword. And what about you, Jack? What's your experiences?
Yeah, no, it's okay. So what I love about doing these webinars is I can't just hear your stories and they go in so deep. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really great to hear what people have been going through. It's no doubt people listening to this will find it healing, and there's nothing more healing sometimes than hearing someone else suffer something you've suffered and you think you're on your own. It's like, oh my goodness, you heard that as well. So I'm sure that's just gone off people from Dawn's sharing there. But I think one of the things that really struck me about loneliness over the years is that when you're a sort of child and you're learning what being lonely means, I think largely we believe lonely to be on your own, like physically on your own. So without somebody around, to be even more explicit. But actually, I've experienced loneliness, and very similar to you, Dawn, by putting barriers up, I suppose, yeah. But still had lots of people around me. And I think that's where I think I found that really helpful, because I think I told myself I think most of my 20s, for example, I'm just about to leave my 30s, but, for most of my 20s, I thought that I was not lonely and not struggling with isolation. And had lots of friends, and that was what filled the gaps, and that was what made life fulfilled. It's interesting how a decade went by and longer, but like a whole 10 years went by, and I just thought that I wasn't lonely because of what I could see of myself and the life around me. But actually, for very same reasons, you can either be physically on your own and lonely, or have lots of people around you and still lonely. And I guess just to really the thing that really helped me put that into a simple sentence is what the Mental Health Foundation actually said about loneliness when the week kicked off a few weeks ago, which is loneliness is the negative feeling we have when there is a mismatch between the relationships we have and the relationships we need. And I just thought that was really insightful and helpful. And it might just help somebody who's just going, well, I've got loads of friends, I'm not lonely. It's like, well, why don't you look into who, are really spending your time with?
It's interesting to actually quantify and give a statement to what loneliness means. And as you say, that gap between the relationships that we want and the relationships that we have. And it's interesting picking up on Dawn's point, where you have people stepping in and saying, yeah, I'm going to help. I'm there. However, from Dawn's perspective, and similar to mine, it's okay people saying we can help, but it's up to us as well to actually take that step and to actually take that hand of offer. And I know for my own self, it's that, well, we can help, I can help. And it's interesting how loneliness quite often is, in inverted commas, considered a negative thing. But I had a particularly difficult childhood, and picking up on a point that Jack made, that I grew up lonely in the true sense of the word, wanting things, didn't get in them, lonely, no one around. But it did actually teach me independence, self-reliance, not then to rely on other people. So then you have that conflict between when someone says, yes, I can help you. And it's something I still have to work on. It's something that's still there, that sort of independence. And someone says, well, I can help you with this. I can stop you being lonely. And there's a bit of a conflict going on. And to your point as well, that we can be lonely in a crowded room. As you say there, Jack, we can be surrounded by people, but still lonely. And coming back to that point about the relationships that we want and the relationships that we have, I wonder whether then, and perhaps a little bit challenges, whether we need to sort of reflect on the relationships that we have and whether they are the ones that are reducing our loneliness. I don't know what you think about that, or what does loneliness mean for you?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if you think about, again, surrounding yourself by lots of people versus really meaningful relationships, and that for me as well can also feed into how whether I feel lonely and seen. I suppose we talk a lot when you talk about mental health issues. For myself, I used to struggle with not feeling seen or heard, and you mentioned needs and wants. So I used to think I didn't have any needs or wants, but we all have them, don't we? And I guess when you go through your own mental health journeys, you realize, you start to understand what those look like and how you can get those met by either yourself or other people. And I think for me, I need to have a deep and meaningful connection with the people I'm connected to. So I don't have a massive friends network, but I do have the ones I do have, I have really meaningful, deep connections with those people. And that for me is what makes me feel not isolated and alone. It's that meaningful connection with a person versus not having that.
A quick story here, because I think it might help sometimes as well in another way of elaborating. But like when I was 14, or just before I was 14, I was away at a school. I was used to go and stay there, but boarding school basically. But like my dad put me up in there, and really worked hard to keep me in there. And then none of the other kids in our family got to do that experience, and it was really great looking back. But unfortunately there was a bit of a business crisis somewhere along the line, and it all came to a sort of skidding halt. But how it affected me, imagine what it's like at that time of life as well. I got home one weekend and I was told I wasn't going back. And that was the last time I saw 99% of all those kids that I was at school with the day before. And what a really weird thing happened in my mind is like they got preserved like ice statues in my head for years. And when Facebook came along after that, I was going, seeing if and it's when they all grown up, it's a really disturbing time. And actually, it was the beginning of a really dark time for me. But the point is that I think since then and other life experiences, that's where we start to solidify. Am I do I belong? Am I lonely? Am I, if you want to talk about animalistic terms, am I in a pack? Am I included? Am I belonging? Do I belong? All those questions they don't necessarily frame themselves like that to a 14-year-old boy, but clearly that's what happened. And then after that, I didn't know who was my friend or where I belonged, and I spiraled out of control in many areas. So I think sometimes we have these big or small life events that can really trigger rejection and a sense of abandonment. And then also going back to something you said, Sylvia, about you actually had a difficult childhood, but perhaps one small silver lining of that, not that we ever sugarcoat things like that, is that you learn to depend less on people. Well, I am the flip reverse of that. And I'm about to approach my 40th birthday, and I still don't have the tools to be on my own for very long. So that is a real fundamental weakness in me, and something I really want to work on. And I haven't really, in earnest, I haven't really put the effort in because it's too painful to think about, and I'm very lucky to be married to my best friend who's been supporting me for a long time and have my wonderful child. I love being a dad. It's one of the best things I've ever done. But I want to learn now how to be in my own company and okay with that.
And do you think, just a question that's popped into my head actually, thinking about my own experiences, do you think that the fact that we've all been working in a very different environment over the last 2 years, I guess, a lot of organizations have moved to a very hybrid way of working, mine included. So I am way less in the office now than I ever used to be, probably 2 days a week, if that. How do we feel that's contributed to, listening to what you've just shared, Jack? How do we feel that's contributed to us? And have we, by default, then probably almost isolated our own selves because of that new way of working? Probably just an open question.
I did quite a big talk early 2020 about exactly that, and because everyone talks about working from home, and I think the short answer is there's, as with everything, there's pros and cons. The pros that we can work from home, but the cons are, yes, we can communicate with technology. I mean, look at us three. We could be anywhere in the world, and yet we're still talking. But at the same time, we lose that personal contact, that being in the office, that business buzz, the creativity, the sharing the ideas, because it's all very regimented. Let's set up a call for this time, set up a call for that time. You can't just pop over and talk to someone. And picking up on something that Jack said in response to your question there, Dawn, is this sense of belonging, and how this sense of belonging somehow dovetails into loneliness. We can be lonely, but do we belong? So I suppose we can still be lonely sitting in like my office at home, but I still belong through the technology. But is that belonging through technology, or is that belonging through a deep, visceral, animalistic sense of I belong to something and to someone? So yes, I think like with everything, there's pros and cons of it all. And I wonder whether this sense of belonging, which is something that Jack mentioned, that taps into something, because for many times, and it's highlighted something for me throughout my life, this feeling of loneliness, there is this missing of belonging somewhere. But at the same time, I balance that with I am me, I belong to me, and I can share with other people if I choose to. So I'm like the flip side of Jack, but that sense of belonging, we can still belong, but there is a difference between being in the office with human bodies around us, be able to sort of go over and say, Jack, how are you getting on with that spreadsheet? Dawn, how are you getting on with that project? It's, that's my response.
I'd like that. I'd like to work with you just so you could come over and ask me about spreadsheets every 5 minutes. Put your arm around me. You couldn't do that on virtual, could you?
Oh, virtual hug.
But there is a physical side. I mean, you obviously can't go around hugging everyone, but there is a physical element, isn't there? It's the hormones and serotonin, oxytocin, we kick off, right? And there's all that. I'm not obviously a scientist, you can tell, but I was always thinking as well, like it's probably a bit of a glib way of putting it, but like imagine, have you got pets, guys? Because I've got a dog. Can you imagine if our pets were really good mates and we just said, well, today you're going to have to do your walkies on Zoom? Obviously they're not, as cognitive as we are, but they just wouldn't have it, would they? And that's the thing. You go back to the animalistic thing, is that we've got to be careful how far we take the technology, because we are still living and breathing, meat, you know what I mean? They were not just robots and androids.
We are human beings, aren't we? We are,
right.
Coming back to animalistic thing, we are meant to be with other humans. We are not meant.
We need connection.
Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
Do you ask the question, Dawn? What would your answer be?
Yeah, I agree with what both of you have said. For me, the hybrid way of working does work, but I think at the start, I really struggled with it because, you know, I am an extrovert and need that connection with people. Hence the you know, the meaningful conversation comment that I just made a minute ago. And I did feel really, really isolated at the start of hybrid working. I was absolutely adamant that I was going to go back into the working environment as soon as I could, 5 days a week. But then I think what I've noticed in myself is I've managed to evolve, and now actually I feel I've got a really good balance. You know, Jack's point about of you know, I have got a dog, and I love the fact that when I'm working at home I can take him out. And I think if we remember back to the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week a couple of years ago, it was connect with nature.
Yes.
So I think we had a conversation about that as well, didn't we, as a group of ambassadors? And that's my happy space. So that's the way I feel connected. And in a strange way, that even though I'm not connecting with a person, because I guess I'm connecting with the moments, the nature, my dog, that's when I feel really full of just gratitude, and I don't feel alone, and that's quite hard to explain what I mean by that, but I guess it gives me a sense of fulfillment that doesn't come from a connection with another human being, but I get that positive, you know, energy boost through another means. So, and I don't feel isolated in situations like that. I guess it's just another way to look at it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting, because both those things, being out in nature, that's living things. They might not be humans. And being with an animal, that's a living thing. So I don't know if there's something to do with that, you know, being with living things.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, exactly. Dawn, I'm imagining a beautiful HD picture of forest wouldn't cut it for you, you know, on a screen. It's not the same thing, is it? You're right. Yeah, literally living and breathing. My sister's really a great one for walking around bare feet on grass and all that. You know, I think people unkindly call her a tree hugger, you know.
No.
But there is definitely something in that. And also when we look at the design of something really micro, like a leaf, you know, we literally are, I think something like our blood pressure lowers, and all this stuff I'm saying needs testing, by the way. If you're listening to this, go away and look at it. It might be talking absolute rubbish, but I've definitely seen something about looking into the design of nature close up actually gives you a sense of film. And often we try and put clever words on it, but I guess you could just say it feels good to me.
Well, exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
As you say, we can make it things very, very complicated and complex. But I'm one of these advocates, just keep it simple. Does it make you feel good or not? Does it make you feel less lonely or not?
When you stroke your dog as well, like both your heart rates go down.
Yeah.
That's lovely. That's such I mean, I've got a really good connection with my dog. I don't know if it's just, I love him so much. But yeah, and just another thing as well, Don, you said about the hybrid working. I'm in a bit of conflict over it. I suppose a lot of people are, because we've all made I'll say, I won't talk for you two, but I think that in the wider business world made a bit of a dash for business savvy decisions around rental for buildings, etc. Really logistical, non-emotional decisions like that. That's, we don't need this building as much, so let's not pay the overhead for it anymore, blah, blah, blah. So and then also people like myself who are parents went, great, you know, that's awesome. I can pick my kids up from school more. There are some wonderful things that have come out from really difficult few years. But the conflict for me is, if I'd started out, particularly in the industry I'm in media and advertising, which is all about people and all about relationships, I just think about those guys in their early 20s, leaving university, start embarking on a career in advertising. There's a culture vacuum, it seems. And we just got to be potentially sensitive of that, because, well, no, we have to be, I think, because there's 20 somethings who want to, you know, either single or with a partner. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't cut it. Right? You need to get in and talk with someone who's actually living and breathing in your world, in your space, in your media spreadsheets or whatever, you know, and you need that. And they're looking for that connection. They're looking to turn around, swing their chair around and sense check something with you. And that all those little micro moments have just been sucked out overnight. So it's certainly not there yet.
That's an interesting point you just said there, because I just imagine these, as you say, these young 20-year-olds growing up in this technological world, to your point you made earlier about in your younger life, not realising that you were lonely, you know, surrounded by those people. And I wonder whether these people will realise that they're lonely, or does it matter that they realise that they're lonely as long as they feel that they're okay? Picking all those bits up. What can we do then as individuals, as colleagues, as friends, as family? What can we do to combat loneliness?
I think for me, it's as simple as we have to admit, it kind of links into the conversation we were just having actually about people who maybe haven't experienced that, you know, 5 days working in the office or whatever it is, because it's very different. I think we all have a bit of a responsibility to, probably to ourselves and also our colleagues, our family, our friends, just to make sure, and it links really nicely, doesn't it, into sort of mental health, mental well-being. Just keep reaching out. You know, I think humans need that connection, as we just talked about, and it's very easy in the virtual world to just sit on Teams. But you know, let's just not forget that picking a phone up to somebody, you know, popping round to your next door neighbor can be really powerful, because it's those instant moments that you get, and it's those endorphins, isn't it, that initial connection, that hello Sylvia, how are you, how's your day been? And I think we all just need to remember to do that, and it's easy to forget it. You know, I do it myself. You sit on Teams all day, but I think it's just that, making sure that you are reaching out to people and connecting on a non-electronic technology. I can't even say that word. Basically connecting as a human and not via a Teams or a Microsoft way to connect. So
I would say, and then on the flip side, I suppose, but the same message for people like myself who are always seeking those opportunities to talk to someone, and like, see, if I see a neighbour, I'm like a puppy, right? If I see someone I know, I'll run after them and want to talk to them. Yeah, I think like it's good to just also remember, like, yeah, you can get all those physical connections with people, but maybe consider on one hand who are the 5 most important people in your life and go deeper with them over the next year or so, rather than try and maintain 25 plate spinnings. You know what I mean?
I think from my side, as I said a bit earlier, I have to sometimes make the effort, because I'm very much okay on my own. And so sometimes it is a case of, and I then need to take the responsibility to actually make the effort to connect with other people. And sometimes I sit and think, so-and-so hasn't rung me, and so-and-so hasn't rung me. And I get a little bit, feeling a bit lonely, a bit isolated, and feel like no one cares and no one's interested. And then I have to remind myself, hang on a minute, Sylvie, you play a part in this too. So it's for me to also reach out to other people, and sort of that sort of element as well. And I think I think both your points, I think we all have the responsibility that even when we're feeling lonely, what can we do about it? It's not always relying on other people to sort that for us. What can we do as individuals? If I'm feeling lonely, what can I do? You know, I'll give Dawn a call, I'll give Jack a call, see how they're doing, you know, and they might be busy, but at least I've made the effort, and they will call me back later, you know. And it's that taking responsibility for ourselves. It's not always, for someone else to do it for us.
Yeah. I was just going to say really quickly, Sylvia, and I think we shouldn't feel ashamed of asking for what we need. You know, we've mentioned needs and wants quite a lot on this in conversation with today. We shouldn't be scared to say, do you know what, I need some support, or I need just to have a conversation, to connect with somebody. I've been on a Teams meeting all day and I just need a human connection. We shouldn't feel ashamed to ask for that, should we? I suppose it's against human nature to actually verbalize what we actually want, but we should get better in that space, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah.
I would just, more of a rhetorical then, but like equally, if you've been calling and texting one person for a long time and you've done maybe the last 20, not to quantify it, and they've not got back, it might be time to start questioning whether that, you're right, you do something about it, but sometimes the scales can be out of balance. And it's like, maybe that person just isn't who I thought they were.
Yeah.
Because it takes two, right, on both sides to make a relationship happen.
Which is the point I was saying earlier, isn't it, about those relationships? Is that a meaningful relationship we need to keep pursuing, or we need to find some others? This has been really, really interesting. Some really enlightening stuff, and thank you both for participating. So
thank you for organising it.
That's all right, and we'll set up another one very soon. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Bye.